Welcome to the Big Kickoff League of Ireland show with myself, Roy Shanahan, and we have Larry Mahony with Let the Players Play book that you've just released, Larry. Coaching is something that I love. I love to see kids develop. I love to see kids improve. I also dislike seeing big queues of kids queuing up to take a shot and kids stepped out and just not participating. So discussions on talking about coaching, discussions on how we should coach, and people would agree and disagree. It's an important thing. So I'm delighted to have you in. I'm going to talk to you first about what is your sort of footballing path? Where did you start first fall in love with football, playing, and then into coaching?
Yeah, well, to be honest, growing up like you did, like we did, the time I grew up, right, everyone played. There wasn't really, I know it's sort of, it's a myth now, but there was nothing else to do at that time. Yeah. So we played football all the time. We played on. I don't remember a time where we didn't play when I was young. Okay, so I ended up going up to St. Joseph's in Sallynoggin, a club that everyone in this country, of course, is very familiar with. When I was 9 years of age, I remember at 9 years of age being sent the 3 miles up to St. Joseph's, up to Sallynoggin, to walk up myself on a Saturday morning and sign up. Okay, your parents would be arrested for sending a child on an errand such as that now. But I played for Joe's, and I was lucky enough to be in one of their best ever teams. We had a really good team. We won a lot of leagues on the way up. We won a lot of cups on the way up, and I did the usual round then because we were in because we were in the A leagues, obviously, as they were then. We had a few schoolboy internationals. I was honoured to be a schoolboy international, and out of being a schoolboy international, I did the usual rounds then of the English clubs. I went on trial. I was over in England a few times. Didn't make it, right? And people slag me for saying this, but I say this all the time. One of those players who nearly made it. They say that those players make the best coaches. So I'm going to stick with that story.
That's just to make them feel better, Larry.
Yeah, I'm going to buy into that one 100%. Okay, so, but the funny thing about it was, like, I always coached. Well, when I say I always coached, in St. Joseph's, as soon as you hit under 13, then you were asked to take a team in what was called the Saturday Morning League now, Academy now. Like everything's an Academy now, yeah. Right? But it was the Saturday Morning League back then. So I actually started coaching when I was 13 years of age, right? And I always wanted to do it. For some reason, it was in me blood, and I do think there are people like that no matter what the story is, no matter where it is, they just want to coach. They just want to pass on whatever knowledge they have. And that's not saying my knowledge was better than anyone else's, but obviously it wasn't at that time. But so I've always coached. So I'm coming up now. I can't believe this, but I'm coming up to my 50th anniversary very, very soon of actually coaching. Okay, so out of that, I did the usual. Went on the coaching courses when I was very, very young. I then graduated to being on the FEI staff, taking the coaching courses. So I did my first FEI course in '87 as a member of the staff. Now, looking back now, I hadn't got a clue what I was doing, but I must have had something going for me because they put me on the staff. So out of that, then the FAI started to run the FOSS courses, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So I became. I think it was the following year in '88, we went full time on the FOSS courses. So I've been more or less coaching full time since then. If in Ireland you can say it's full time, but I've been doing that since then. So I've worked in the National League. I've worked with Drogheda United first, Bray Wanderers, Shamrock Rovers, and the last time I was in the National League was in the season 2015 with Athlone. I've worked in the Women's National League then with the DLR Waves, as they are now. Well, I'm not really sure what name they have now. They seem to have a different name every season. But so I worked in the Women's National League as well. Before that, I was very lucky to have worked with the UCD women's team, pre-National League, that dominated here. And the reason that they dominated was because they were actually, UCD were very, very forward in their thinking, because the women's soccer team was actually in the high performance unit then. So I learned an awful lot in terms of training and planning from being in the high performance unit in UCD. There was a woman called Lisa Regan then, who was a Canadian weightlifter, competitive weightlifter, who I think had lifted in the Olympics, who was the head of the high performance then. So I learned an awful lot there as well.
Brilliant. So you're going a while, is what you're saying.
You're being very kind. That's a lovely, lovely way of saying it.
Okay, so this is your book, Let the Players Play. There's a million billion coaching books out there. There's a whole lot of stuff going out on the internet. So why did you decide to write a book?
Well, look, when I was in the FAI, it sort of fell into my lap that I ended up doing the writing parts of the courses. I ended up doing the handouts. I ended up having a role to play in the planning and the curriculum of the course. So I've always sort of written, even when I was a young fellow, I would have been writing away. And when we first started coaching, I remember taking it on an old taking me notes on an old post office notebook, and then going around telling everyone when I had 100 drills in my notebook. So I've always sort of written, and I've always had ideas. Now, what pushed me to finally to get a proper book out was, like a million other people, I suppose, around the world, was the lockdown. So I actually sat down, and I sat down for 4 hours every day during the first lockdown last year, and I tipped away at this. Okay. What I decided to write on was grassroots, because I sort of came at the book from two different angles. But one of them was that there's, as you said, there's an awful lot of information around now. People can go to the internet and they can see all these people training. They can see Barcelona training sessions. They can see any top class team that they want to see. Plus, there are a million other coaching sites where coaches are putting their own stuff up. And now, what I thought, and the impression that I've had from this, is that everything is very, very high level. Everything is up in the air. So all these grassroots coaches are looking at Barcelona Academy, and they're going back and they're trying to give under 11 and under 12 players Barcelona Academy sessions, right? Which, from my point of view, obviously isn't the way to go with young players. Okay. Now, from the other point of view, all year staff in the coaching courses, I'm working on coaching courses, I always found that the thing that coaches found most difficult, and you have experience of this, I'm sure, the things that coaches found most difficult is actually coaching in the games. Yeah. Right? Rather, a lot of coaches can be good at running drills. They can be good at putting on functional practices where they might be crossing and finishing, stuff like that. But the actual game itself, to me, is the most important part of every training session. Okay, so the coaches need to be able to go in and impact the player's performance by coaching in the game. So that was what prompted me to do this. Now, over the last few years, I've more or less come full circle, where over the last few years, I've been doing an awful lot with kids. So I saw this as a way to try and help the coaches who work with those kids.
So when I look at it, and I think I have another little piece here, you have kind of jumped a couple of stages, haven't you? Because you're on the move the ball element of the game when you go into this book, not with, I suppose, the skills, the technique, the manipulation of a ball. Why did you jump straight into that?
Right. The reason for that is the stage that we're at, we're talking about coaching in the games. Now, previous to that, so this would be a stage that would come after the individual training, right? So the first couple of stages are purely based on developing individual skills. So in other words, the two youngest age groups, right? I would be a great proponent of, in those youngest age groups, that players just are developed as individuals. Because the first thing that adults do when they get young kids is they put them in pairs, right? And they get them passing to each other, right? And young players at that age, now I can see you shaking your head, so you know what I'm going to say next. Young players at that age just are not prepared for that. No. Because young players at that age, psychologically, they're intrinsically selfish. Now that sounds a little bit critical of the kids, but it isn't. What that means is the kid or a child only sees the ball and themselves. So we've all been at games for children at that age where there are 14 players or 10 players, and every single one of them is chasing after the ball. Yeah. Okay. So the players at that stage are not ready for passing. They're not ready to spread away from each other because good old Mother Nature hasn't given the gifts, hasn't given them the mental facility to spread away from each other because they only see themselves on the ball. And like I said before, if you're lucky, they'll see themselves, the ball, and the proper goal to go to. Right? They'll see a goal as well. A lot of the kids at the very youngest ages, and we've all seen this, don't understand the goal even. No. Right? So in terms of coaching in the game, I wouldn't be coaching in those games at that age. At that age, huge emphasis on one-on-one training and really, really small games. But those games at the end of training, I wouldn't be coaching in. I'd be just letting the players play. So when we come to the next stage, in terms of spreading the players out and trying to get them to play as team members, okay, they're psychologically, obviously they're a bit more mature now because a couple of years have gone. So in their general life, if you think about it this way, in their life at home and in school, they're being asked to look away from themselves. They're looking to be less selfish, okay, and they're looking to start thinking of others. So we match that. We match their psychological maturity, for want of a better word, at home with how we approach the game. So they're ready to think of other people. They're ready to be part of a team now, and it's only then that we start talking about coaching in the games.
Yeah. When I look at, as you said, academies, everything's an academy now, but
everything's an academy.
At least people know what an academy is supposed to be, I suppose. Yeah. It gives it a title. But when I look at academies, and you will see quite a good few of them who do maybe 3v3 games, 4v4 games. That kind of infuriates me as well. From the get-go, it should be, as you said, 1v1, let them go play. There's no point in showing them clips of how great Maradona was and Messi was at running with the ball.
Well, there's no harm in that. And then that's what you're training is based on.
We're asked to pass the ball then at that age. We don't let them go. Go ahead and do what you can do. Show us what you can do. And then it really infuriates me when I see a game at the end of this where they give them 15 minutes at the end and they'll have a 7v7 game and all these kids are swarming around instead of having maybe your 2v2 and at most maybe a 3v3 game at the end just to let them have a go. But so they're little things. But so you take the step on next up from academy and then you're looking at.
Could I just say one more thing? Could I just say one more thing about that, Roy? One thing I say to coaches, because when I coaches and parents, when they're first faced with this idea of just letting the players at the youngest ages have one ball each, right? They think it's a little bit foreign, it's not the game, but they're right. It's not the game, because what the adults are thinking of is the adult game. For those kids, it's a different game. It's not the same game. So what I say to these parents is, hold on a second. These kids are going to be passing for the rest of their lives. Let them run with the ball now. Yeah. And if you're patient enough. So I don't think, look, it's very hard to pin ages. And you would have known this from the coaching course. You can't really say, well, you can do it at this age or you can do it at that age. You can give general guidelines because a really, really good under-8 player can do what, let's say, an average under-10 player could do. So you could give an under-8 player who's very, very good something further on, okay? But most players will start looking away from themselves and start seeing this passing game and starting to get better at this around 10 years of age, right? Which gives you from under 6 to under 10, which gives you about 4 years for them to develop their individual skill, right? Which is a great amount of time. Mm-hmm. So we can produce, at those age groups, we must produce more skillful players.
Now, when you say that, Larry, because this is my little gripe with football in Ireland. We talk about technical players, and this is kind of getting away from your book, but we'll come back to it again. We talk about technical players, building technical players, how we should do it, but we don't have as technically, I suppose, elite players, if you want to call it that way. Players who are good at running. You look at our national team, we don't have players who are good at dribbling by players. We don't have forward players who are of quality. We're not
Right.
producing those type of
Let me
players.
just say one thing to you there, Roy, that I say.
But why is that, though?
Sorry, Roy, let me just go back to one thing about that. Now, actually, I will be answering your question by saying this. All right. People seem, when the international team doesn't play well and we don't play skillfully, people say it's the FAI's fault, right? What are we not doing at home? Well, they seem to forget those players are not being developed as professional players by us. It's the English clubs that are finishing off the product. Like we've all known the players who have gone away to England with absolutely fantastic technical skill and have come back with, for want of a better term, a much more blunt game, right? You know, we all know players like that. So it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit unfair to say that we don't produce technical players. I work in schools, right? I go into schools and in every class, every single class, of course, I'm not saying there's no exceptions, but it's very rare to find an exception. In every single class, there's a fantastic player. Yeah. There's a fantastic technical player. Now, there's something like, so if you just take that there's six players in every school, there's 900 primary schools in the country. So there's over 5,000 fantastically technical players in the country.
So where's the failure then?
Because the failure,
as you're saying, and I never said it was the FAI. What I'm saying is
football in general. People do blame the FAI. That was the point I was making.
Probably entitled to blame them for some things. We won't blame them for everything.
And poor John Delaney. John Delaney never sat foot on a pitch in his life, and he gets blamed for us not having skillful players. Now, sorry, I used the wrong term there, but I was saying poor John Delaney.
But anyway, so there's obviously something, because by the time they get over to England, how technically they've evolved. By the time they get over to England, and it's probably going to change a little bit now anyhow, I'm probably going to have more players staying here with the Brexit and all that sort of stuff anyhow. So we can only blame ourselves now. So, but when it goes, so when we get up to the age of 16, 17, 18, they should have fairly good, and it's not technical. I'm not necessarily just saying technical ability to be able to take a ball in, but to be comfortable around 3 or 4 players, to not lose a ball, to take someone on, you know, that kind of thing. We don't seem to have that in the final third, and obviously, if we don't have it, there's something there that's missing somewhere.
Right, and again, don't forget these players when they hit the international team, they've been at least 5 years in the English academies or in the English clubs. Okay. Now, what's the problem with that 5,000 players that I spoke about? And you have to be honest and say the main problem is the adults that come in contact with those players, because as soon as they come to teams, right now, obviously there are good clubs, right? But in a lot of situations, these players are put in teams where it's not that it's actually coached out of them, but it's not encouraged enough. Let's put it that way. Okay, it's not encouraged enough for them to be the highly technical players that they were when they were younger players. I think that's really, really one of the problems. Okay, one of the other problems is the pressure to win at schoolboy level. There shouldn't be the pressure to win. That definitely is there. It's definitely there.
Okay, right. So do we take it that or do you feel that at a schoolboy level, and now probably going into the National League of Ireland level, are we doing enough to develop the players that we really want, as in technically good, forward-thinking players?
Yeah, again though, Roy, these players, your granny could go down to the side of a football pitch and pick that player out.
Yeah.
You know, this is the point I'm making. We're talking about producing. You're talking about the end of the shoot. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the shoot, these are great players. You see, we look at professional players and we look at players playing for the international team, and we say he's not that good. You know, he could be better, or he's brutal. You know, we say that about international players, but these are professional footballers. They only became professional footballers because they were great players. Yeah, you know, they were great schoolboy players. Right, so the bar is set a little bit high for those players. we do have young players with that technical skill, right? Now, what we're saying is that we want to produce more of them, right? And that's where I think, right, by educating coaches at grassroots level, we can produce more skillful players. Again,
the more you have, the more likely you're going to get the golden nuggets.
And it's again just what we spoke about, right? That young player who's brilliant at dribbling, when he's under 9, or he's in an academy. Well, look, and then I work with the kids in Enniskerry and Wicklow, and we call it an academy, so I can't really slag it.
No.
People call it the academy, right? But as soon as the kids come out of these academies, and what we used to call in St. Joseph's the Saturday Morning League, right? They've done great work. You know, they've been taught to turn, they've been taught to dribble, they've been taught a good touch on the ball, they've been taught keepy uppies, right? You know, but as soon as someone sees team, right, they start to think position and they start to think passing.
So this fantastically evolves into your book, because what happens is you will get a club, maybe like Enniskerry, maybe like Lucan United, maybe like whoever it is, and they will maybe don't have the coaches, but they may have parents who are coming in to take over these teams.
Exactly.
And so these teams maybe haven't got the development, or the players don't have the development in them because the coaching isn't there. Even the basics of coaching isn't there. So this is where your book takes that up.
Yeah, you're right. Now, again, when they come out of the initial stages, we're talking about how they link up. Okay, so what I've done in the book, I've tried to do. Now, I'm fairly confident that I've done it. I've given a grassroots coach, a parent coach, whatever term you want to use, I've tried for it to be as comprehensive as possible in terms of giving them everything they need to coach players in small games in this initial stage of when they're starting to play together. So it's very, very simple. It's such a simple idea. I've never seen, and I'm putting my hand out to be slapped in this, I've never seen such a simple strategy adopted. And the strategy is very simple. We start with the smallest team that we can, which is a 2-a-side. Okay, so the previous stages we've emphasized 1 against 1. So in this stage, right, we're going to talk about 2-on-2. Right, now, why do we go that small? It's very, very simple, right? It's because it's the simplest picture, right? And it's the clearest picture that these young children can see. There's only me and there's only you, right? And there's nothing else complicating the picture other than the 2 guys that are playing against us. So it's the simplest picture possible. And this is what you might say is a byline for the book, right? Simplicity is the key to coaching children, right? All of a sudden, like I said, we have fellas doing Barcelona stuff with Enniskerry's Division 3Z team, right? and it doesn't work, right? So again, I say in the book, it's the job of the youth coach. The job of the youth coach is to simplify rather than complicate the game. Okay. So now to take the 2-on-2 and to take the 2-on-2 in very, very simple terms. When the players were playing 1-on-1, every single coach in the country who's ever done a coaching course always tells the players the right thing. They tell them to get their heads up. Right? Okay. So when they're playing 1-on-1, they only have to get their heads up to see the player in front of them, which is quite obvious because there's only one player in front of them. Now, when they're playing 2-on-2, we're asking them to get their head up, but we're asking them to get their head up and see more than that. Okay. And again, the simplest picture they can see is only one more player. So instead of just seeing the defender in front of them, we're asking them now to have a look for the reaction of the second defender. All right. So we've got to see what the second defender are going to do. So you and I, we're going to spread apart. Obviously, this is what we're trying to teach them. Rather than 2 come out on top of the ball, that the 2 players, attacking players, spread out, and then look for the reaction of the defenders. Now, obviously, the nearest defender will press the ball. Now, we're asking the second attacker to stay away and see what happens with the defenders. Now, if the second defender, usually at a young age, children will take one of 2 options. They'll take the extreme options, right? So the defender will either go all the way out there, and mark you, right? Or probably more commonly, the second defender will come on top of the ball.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the player on the ball has a decision to make. The decision is the age-old, the first, most basic tactical decision that every player in the world has to make. Do I dribble or do I pass? Okay. And the answer, again, I keep coming back to this, to the S word. I keep coming back to the answer is simple. If the second defender stays out with you, and we're tricky here with the cameras. If the second defender stays out with you, we haven't thrown the baby out with the bathwater because we're now starting to pass. What we have now is we still have a one-on-one. So we're saying to the attacker, dribble. Because we're not going to throw just because all of a sudden we're starting. This is the mistake, again, that all these coaches make. As soon as passing comes in, dribbling is forgotten.
Yeah.
Right. So if the defender goes away, the attacker on the ball must dribble. Now, then common sense tells you if the second defender comes in and leaves you free out there, I will pass to you. Dribble or pass. The simplest, most basic tactical decision that a player has to make. But here's the key. The key is that player looking and reading it for himself. Not you telling him, or me telling him, or his daddy telling him, or his mother telling him. The key is that player looking up and seeing that for himself. Okay.
So now, we talk about, Larry, just before you go on, we talk about how we as coaches communicate with the kids, yes, how we put things across. So the way I would do it would be to ask him a question.
Yes.
You've lost the ball 3 times now. Is there any other way now that you could maybe exactly not lose the ball?
Exactly. Now, like in the old cowboy movies, now you've headed me off at the pass there, because that's what I was just about to move.
I just didn't know how long you were going to take, Larry.
yeah, I know. Yeah, that wouldn't be something I haven't heard before, by the way. But anyway, so this was the point I was going to make. So rather than you and me telling them, right, we've got to give the coach the tools to help the player to work that out for himself. And you've used you've ruined it for the audience on me now. You've ruined me big move there, right? Okay, so it's questioning. So you're right what you're saying. So instead of saying move over there, spread out, you say, look, do you think it would be better if you had more space for yourself? Now that's a very, very leading question. It's very hard for them to say no to that one. Okay, yeah. But the next question is, where do you think you should go to get yourself more space? So this is how we spread them apart initially. Okay, so then when it comes to the scenario we just spoke about, the question I will ask the player is, now, if that defender is over the far side, what do you think you can do? And again, don't forget, they've done anything up to 5 years of dribbling up to now. So that player should answer, take the defender on. Okay, so if the opposite is the case, and you say, well, if the 2 men are over here and your man is over there free by himself, what do you think you should do? And then, of course, the answer is the pass. And then would you
put it to, so you have 2v2s, would you put it to the group? So you have the group there, 2v2.
Yes.
I wonder what little Johnny here, I wonder what little Johnny could do to actually maybe not lose the ball the next time. What would you do now when you get in? How would you not lose the ball the next time? Or
exactly. And of course, this is the modern way of coaching kids. Okay, now when I say modern, I'm talking about the last 20 years rather than the old days like we were taught, you know. But, you know, but the thing about it is, in the book, again, I've tried to give the grassroots coach or the parent coach everything he or she needs. All those questions are in there. All the questions for all the situations are in there. Now, look, I'm not stupid. I don't think it's 1000% comprehensive, but I've tried to include every single situation I've ever come across in 2-on-2, which, you know, it's only 2-on-2. There's a limited amount of, but I'm not, I acknowledge in the book that somewhere, sometime, some kids are going to come out with some wacky thing that I've never seen before. But like I said, so all those questions are there in the book for the coach to ask, right? So we've done that. Okay, we've done that. We've spread them apart, right? So we come to the next the perennial question, the question that you're always being asked, when do you move them on from that?
Yeah.
Right.
Now, just before you move on, Larry, because I'm reading a little bit in the book about, again, how we communicate with the kids or anyone, I suppose, when we're coaching. You suggested that we don't tell the kids to spread out, that we communicate them in a different way.
Yeah, well, look, after you've done the work now, obviously after you've done this work, you don't shout spread out, because then the players will spread out. Okay. Well, what you say is look around, or where are you, or whatever your own terms are. Because again, that's one of the things I say. These are my terms, right? My language has been shaped by my background, just as your language has been shaped by your. So I'll say some funny things that the kids nowadays find funny anyway, right? And you'll say something different. You'll use it a different way. But again, the message is look around and see, because again, the key to being a really, really good player is to see, is the you know, the old, what we used to say, you know, it's vision. Yeah. He's a player of great vision, and that's what we're trying to develop. Even though
what about cues and triggers, Larry?
Yeah, well, that
is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, that's a very modern way of saying it. It's the same thing, right? You know, like they're looking for a cue, so they're looking for what's happening. I would put it much more simply to that. I would say look and see what the defenders are doing, and then come up with the solution. I would try and keep it that simple for them.
Yeah, because you could have that instance where they've developed into the 2v2s. They're going on to 3v3s now. You've already had discussions, or you've led them into the situation where they're able to spread out without you even talking about it. But the odd time that they need reminding. But it may be something simple, like, you know, you have a word like shape, and that might mean get out.
I can honestly say, with kids this age, Roy, I've never ever used that word.
What I'm saying is, you could use a term that is going to be, and it doesn't have to be, that can mean spread out. And then when you hit under 12, 13, 14, and you're going into it, that cue is still there, so it's always there with them.
But I think look around. I think look around. Look and see. You know, look and see. In the 2-on-2. Again, it's the simplest picture that you can have. So there's not that much looking to be done.
No.
But what we're doing in the 2-on-2 in terms of looking is reading the game. What we used to call reading the game. You know, there are an unlimited number of terms now that they use for the same thing. But we would say read the game, look and see what's going on around you. Look for the position of your own players, but most importantly, look for the position of the defenders, because it's the position of the defenders that really determine what we're going to do. Okay, so what I was going to say to you about moving on then, right? The perennial question, like I said, every single coaching course, every coach's session that you do or workshop that you do, when do you move them on? And without being glib about it, the answer is always the same, right? The answer is always the same. It's when they're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they're doing what you've set them to do, if they've achieved what you want them to achieve in the 2-on-2, then it's time to move them on to the 3-on-3. Now, with each group will take a different time. So some coaches, one of the things that I see and I look at on the internet, and I shake my head when I see them, is guys who put up, here's a season's plan. Here's your season plan, right? And I'm shaking my head and saying, no, because there's no such thing as a season for young kids, because you don't know how long each thing is going to take you. So your team might become good at playing 2-on-2 in, you know, maybe 3 months. My team might take 6 months. Okay, so I can't plan a season ahead. This is why I said, in terms of you've shown the program or the model for player development that I've simplified. I think I've simplified it. The model, all these models of player development, it's very, very difficult for me to look at them and not think theory, not practice.
Yeah.
Because the practical side of the game teaches me that you cannot say, at under 11, I'm going to do this. At under 12, I'm going to do this. At under 13, I'm going to do this, because every group is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's only common sense. It's only common sense. So when they're ready to move on, they move on. Okay. So when they're playing 2-on-2 well, and what you've taught them in 2-on-2 is transferred into the games that you see at the weekend, okay, that's when they're ready to move on. Okay? And again, the strategy is very simple. We only add one player. We go from 2-on-2 to 3-on-3.
Yeah. And then that, of course, incorporates it into the game, because even in 11-a-side, you're going to have 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s. They're always there. So it's not something that's always
again,
going
in terms of the young age, thankfully now, like I can remember the old days when we started on 11-a-side. I started on 11-a-side. I went way back in the mists of time. We started at 11-a-side. Right? Now, of course, the players are playing 5-a-side, which is fantastic. Right, the players are playing 7-a-side when they get a bit older. They're playing 9-a-side, so that simplifies everything. But what they've learned in the 2-on-2, right, is for two players to spread apart. Now, I have a saying. You've seen the saying, right? Yeah, I say to the kids, stay out of his garden. Don't be in his space. Right? Okay. Some kids scratch their heads when they hear that, but most of them get a good laugh out of that, you know. So really, that's what we've done in the 2-on-2. We've asked no two players to be in the same space. So that's all I want to see them when they play 5-a-side or 7-a-side, because that's all I've covered.
So we go on to 3v3s. Is that what I have there? Warm-ups for 3v3s. I just wanted to talk about, and I know there's a couple of 2v2s there as well. In that, I might have the 3v3s elsewhere, but I just want to talk about
3-on-3 warm-up you had up there.
The warm-ups is something, because generally coaches have an hour to train. They're normally in and normally out. The way it is now, time and space is at a premium, so they're in and they're out. A lot of people take up a lot of time of their session doing warm-ups, which, you know, you could have 25 minutes gone in the warm-up and you're after losing out a whole lot of time. So how should they incorporate their warm-ups to get the full benefit once and not losing out on their...
So what I've done there, what I've done in the book, is I've given a specific warm-up for 3-on-3. Now, it's not a fancy warm-up. It's just players move around the square and pass between each other. It's as simple as that. But what we use that for is to teach players how to work off each other, how to communicate with each other. Now, when I say communicate, every time you ask players, how does he know that you want the ball? And every single one, the first answer is call, right? But that's not what we mean by communication. What we mean is that the players have got to watch each other. Again, what we said earlier about looking to read the game. So you and I are working together in the square. I've got to see when you're ready to pass it. And then when you're ready to pass it, I've got to move. When I move, you've got to give me the ball at the right time. Okay? Now, that is very simple. But the aim of the book is to be very simple. But that's very simple. But watch Match of the Day tonight, right? And see how many times that simple communication between two players go wrong. That someone plays a pass when he thought his teammate was moving, or someone doesn't play the pass when his teammate moves. But it's, again, what we're doing at this level is paring it down to its most basic form. Okay, I liken this to, you know, I know this is a bit arty, but not arty-farty, but a bit pie in the sky. I always liken this process to what a sculptor does. So when a sculptor starts, he's got a big, huge block of wood. He's got a huge thing, right? But eventually what the sculptor does, he chips away everything that he doesn't need until he's left with what he wants. Okay, so I'm saying we chip everything else away. We chip all the fancy, and again, there is room for all these warm-ups, right? All the fancy warm-ups and all the mannequins and all of that, right? But you're right what you're saying, and this was a point. This is a point I make to coaches all the time. Most teams now, and it's a little bit different now because we're moving into the summer, but most teams now are hiring all-weather pitches, AstroTurf. Right, they've an hour, right? And you're right what you're saying. I watch these clubs because they come and hire our place, right up in Enniskerry. They come up and hire our place, and they're spending 20 of the 60 minutes on the warm-up. Okay? We've always had a saying, and people don't want to listen to this for some reason, and to me it makes common sense. The best way to warm up for football is to play football.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to come to now.
Yeah.
There's probably there is no need to have probably warm-ups at that age, because first of all, physically they're highly unlikely to get injuries. You're looking at when you hit 12, 13, exactly. The body is starting to change. That's when you're going to get your muscle injuries now. Yes, so your warm-up may actually just be to actually physically warm them up if it's a cold evening, just get them all moving around so they're not cold. But other than that, you nearly can go straight into what you're going to be doing.
Yes, and the thing about that warm-up, right, it's teaching at the same time. When you first start to use it, it will take time. It'll take longer. And this is one of the things that I say about in the book. When the players are learning the warm-up and learning what you're looking for, right, in terms of this timing off each other, it will take you a while to do that. But once they know it, they only need 5 to 6 minutes to do it. They do 5 or 6 minutes, and then you're on to the next part of your session. But what you've done, you've warmed them up physically, which, as you say, might not be the most important thing to do. But more importantly, you've warmed them up mentally. You've tuned them in to what you want to see when they play.
Yeah. Well, Larry, I've been up there when it's been 0 or -1 degrees. Sometimes physically, just to get the blood going in the body is something.
But what you want
lose the focus of the players,
Yeah, but what you want in that practice is you want everyone moving all the time, and you want them moving in a match-specific way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you can use that. But the messages in the warm-up then carry through into the sessions, because I don't know how many teams, and again, this is a simple basic. We look on it as a basic. We always taught it on the coaching courses. Your warm-up must relate to the session that you're going to do. So I don't know how many times I've seen coaches doing dribbling warm-ups where every player has a ball, right, where they've dribbled around and they've done a fantastic warm-up, and then they've set up a shooting exercise where there's a queue of 19 players playing it up to the coach, getting it back and having a shot. So your warm-up must, and again, that's only common sense, but not common practice, that your warm-up must relate to what you're doing. So once we move on to 3-on-3 then, more emphasis again is put on the players linking up together and passing together. Okay, even though I would say at 3-on-3, and I know I'm going against the grain a little bit this way, in 3-on-3, I'm still thinking of mostly a dribbling game with passing now as variation.
Yeah. So I think this is a fantastic book. Just for
you're only saying that, Roy, because it's true.
It's not. I tell you what. It's because of what we've just discussed there. Again, parents getting thrown in. Not really. Firstly, going to YouTube. YouTube is the best place to go and look for stuff, but they go to the complex stuff. The book is good just to keep it basic, just to make sure that they stay related to the game. 2v2, 3v3, as you said, it goes up to you go to your 4v4s. And then that does link on, as you see in the illustration here in the image, it does link on to when it goes to 11 aside or 9 aside, 9v9, 7v7, whatever it is. It all does link up. But with so many teams being taught by, and so the parent might actually have some football knowledge. They might have played football themselves, but they may not have coached. So if there's that kind of parent that's out there, they will grasp what they're talking about in the book, and they'll be able to formulate and put that across themselves.
You see, I'm not saying that my plan is the ultimate plan. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is this is what 30 years of coaching has taught me. Mm-hmm. So not only have I put every coaching point that I would use with the players, but it's in the order I would do it. So I'm saying, first of all, when you add the third player, where will he go? So I'll show you in the book where he goes or she goes. Right. So we show you that, and I said, well, look, if he goes in there, what do you say to him? Okay. Well, if you're in there, who else is there? Should you be in there with someone else? So when we bring the third player in, what we're trying to do then is we're trying to put the third player forward of the other two.
Yeah, and you can see in this illustration that you have Now, I know it's in the 4v4,
That's the
but you've
four
just
and four.
started to illustrate where the space might be, and it does move on to where the player might make a run and where someone else
Yeah.
might be focused on going.
So what I'm saying is, if the parent shows that, and this is a big word in the book, by the way, patience. If the parent or the coach or the grassroots coach can be patient enough to read it through, right, and to become familiar with what I'm saying there, they should have an idea of what to look for next.
Yeah.
Rather than going straight in and jumping straight in, have a read of the whole program so you know where you're going to end up. So you know each step on the way. So I'm saying, well, this is what this player will do when he first comes in. Now, when you move him up ahead of the other two, these are the runs that he might make. These are the good runs. These are the not so good runs.
And you have it in the book as 3 big movement ideas.
Yeah. Now, what I know is, and I know for definite, that this order of these coaching points has worked for me.
Yeah.
Right. I know that it works because it has worked for me. And I'm not talking about working with elite. I hate using that word. I'm not talking about with the elite players. I'm talking about with grassroots players.
Yeah. No, 100%. I've seen coaches who have UEFA B and UEFA A badges, and then they go and they coach the small side of games, and they coach in a UEFA A and UEFA B style, and it's not the same. They're coaching in 2 different manners. Because and I see, and it really bothers me when I see academies putting up, we have UEFA A, you have a UEFA B coach here. It means a damn. It doesn't mean nothing at all to that. You have to micro coach in these situations, just as your book is 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, 4.
It's a while since I've done this, but I used to go and present to clubs the ideas, and I used to put the qualifications and the experience up on the board, and I'd say, UEFA A licensed instructor, Shamrock Rovers, international team, women's national league up on the board. And then I'd say, you see that? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything because we're working with kids. Because the kids' game is not the adults' game, right? And all adults are in a hurry, for some strange reason, to push the kids towards the adult game. Positions, right? Positions, formations. Like, there are a lot of people who think formations are the be all and end all. Formations mean nothing. They literally mean nothing. If you have 11 better players than I have, right, 11, again, we're using this word, technical players, who are better at keeping the ball and who are better than denying my players the space that they need, you're going to beat me. And it doesn't matter what formation you use or what formation I use. Right? Obviously at the youngest level, because the game isn't as thought out and it isn't as planned there. But unfortunately, right, and again, I can't say I wish I had all those years to live all over again, but I can, believe it or not, I can still remember when I was a young fella, right? And people might have said to me, right, the most important thing for a coach is patience, right? But I didn't want to hear that, right? And the young coaches today that qualified, they don't want to hear that. They want to be straight away doing UEFA A license stuff, and they all want to work in the academies. They all want to be working in the League of Ireland, but there are only a limited amount of places there, right? But the problem is they take that ambition down to a lower level, and they're trying to do, as you say, they're trying to do their A license stuff with young kids. What I always say to young players, and we used to say this on the coaching courses, and again, I'm not that sure that the message ever got across. If people are starting, right? If they are starting now, I'm talking in old money here in terms of the coaching badges, because I have to be honest and say the names of the badges and the levels of the badges have changed so much since I worked for the FAI. I'm not really sure, right? But what I used to say to coaches, when you start off, go and start with the youngest team.
Yeah.
Right? And do the first coaching course. So when those kids are 2 years older, go and do the next one. Right? You're going to have to cut that one out or I'm joking. Sorry about that. Okay, I've talked too much, my throat is so dry. I'll just take a drop of water here.
You do.
So when your kids are ready, so what you should do is move up the coaching ladder as your kids get older. So by the time you get to under 14, if you've done all the previous ones, right, and more importantly, if your players have all done the right stuff all the way up, well, then when they come to 14, 15, 16, well, then you can start doing your A license. Because then the stuff you do on your A license is relative to the learning of your players. So, you know, again, the coach must match what he's doing to the readiness of the child, not the other way around. Alan Wade, who used to be the director of coaching over here, who was a fantastic football mind, and he said, now let me get this right. I could get this wrong, right? It's football for children, not children for football, right? We have to think that it's football for children, not the other way around. But again, lots and lots of adults try and shape the kids that they have into their vision of what the game looks, or what their game looks like. And unfortunately, their game looks like what they see on the television, you know, not what the kids are seeing in front of them.
Yeah, no, it's a big point. Where do people get your book? How much does the book cost?
The book is at a special introductory price now at the moment of €20.
On sale now, is it already?
It's a bargain, absolute bargain. I have I wouldn't go as far now. I wouldn't be so presumptuous as to call it a website, but I have a web page for the book. It's called bigpicturecoachingireland.com. Okay.
And what price did you put on it?
Sorry, it was €20. It's €20 for the paperback, and it's €12 for the ebook.
Okay, and I 100% have looked through the whole book. I've had a good gander at it. It's what I would believe in, as in, you know, you've got to coach the way you're going to play the game. A lot of cones dabbled around the place and dancing through them. It doesn't happen out in the pitch. So, you know, there is room for individual training. I'm 100% behind that. Doing your own stuff 100%, you know, working on your technical skills, working on your agility, your speed. But when you come in and you have your hour,
I'll put the cat in among the pigeons there, Roy. You can do that at home with a wall.
You can.
You don't have
That's
to pay
exactly it. Bounce the ball off the wall. You're right.
Yeah, you don't have to pay a coach to do that now. You can do that. The old-fashioned method was doing it with a wall, you know.
Yeah, we used to love the wall, though. I don't think kids love the wall anymore. That's probably the big part. But this book certainly does give, and I'm putting it out there. You may feel it's a broader range, but I'm putting it out there at the parents and the former players who are starting at the youngest age with kids and bringing them into teams from your 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s. And looking for material. Don't be looking online for all that sort of stuff. This is the type of book instead. Buy the book instead. This is the type of book.
Turn off your Wi-Fi and buy the book. I think an important point again, Roy, in that what we're saying, right? Again, there is no such thing as a quick fix. We're talking the stuff that's in the book. By the time you move from actually coaching in 2-on-2 to 4-on-4, I think normally, right, if you're going to cover all the material that we have in the book, usually it takes 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, people who do coaching courses think they're going to do that. A lot of people I've seen in coaching courses think they're going to do that in 2 sessions, because we used to always have this when it came to practical exams. Coaches thought that when they did their coaching exams, they were going to do every single practice and go through the whole progression. But that's not the case, right? So we're talking about, for want of a better term, and I hate using this term, but for average players, we're talking probably 2 seasons to cover what's in the book. Now, again, the better players will progress quicker, right, and more quickly, and players who might need a little more help will need a little more time. But by the time they get to the far side, right, they're doing decent stuff in that, you know. They'll know when we put like you were saying about the third player coming in 3-on-3, and we put them ahead of the other 2. When we bring the 4-on-4 in, we bring a player behind the other 2. So in other words, what's nowadays called the playmaker, and I call it the playmaker, because that's what we want to teach that player to do. Now, the stuff he's doing, we try to make it as simple as possible, But, you know, when we get to that stage, we're talking about players, the timing of support and runs, when to go, where to support other players. So we've moved the learning along. But if they've done all the stuff previous to that, the players should be ready for this. So when they go into the next phases, they should be well able to fit what they've learned in the smaller games into the bigger games. And that's the whole aim. And the big picture, and I always use this, and you know Murray Price, right? And I think everyone that's involved in football in Ireland knew Murray Price. I was lucky to work with Maurice Price, right? Because in my mind, I've been around now, I've seen an awful lot of coaches. In my mind, Maurice Price was a world-class coach, right? And I learned so much from him. But I always remember he used to say to me, big picture first. Yeah. Big picture first. You must see the big picture beforehand. If you go in details all the time, players will become confused if you haven't done the big picture. So the big picture in terms of this is teaching young players right at the very start to make their own decisions, to think for themselves, to think independently. And this is the thing that you hear a lot of lip service being paid to. Oh yeah, players must make their own decisions, but I've never seen it done. Yeah. I've never seen it done purely. Right? I've often heard people talk about it, and then when you see their teams play, they're telling the player they're playing the game for the kids. And you've heard me go through the routine that I have about what I call the parents' relay. I know on the coaching course you would have heard me talk about that. And the parents' relay is when you go to a children's game, a kids game, and the parents are around the pitch, and strangely by coincidence the goalkeeper's dad is behind the goal, right? So when the goalkeeper gets the ball, his dad is behind him telling him where to play the ball, right? So he passes it, so he tells him to play it out to Johnny on the right. So he gives it to Johnny on the right. Now just by coincidence Johnny's dad is out on the right, so he tells Johnny to play it out wide to the next player whose parent just happens to be there. So his parent is telling him to cross it in, right? So, and his dad, just by coincidence, happens to be behind the other team's goal, and he's telling his young lad to shoot. So the parents have played a little relay game where they've played all the game for the kids, okay? And I've seen that, you know, I wish I had a euro for every time I've seen that. And I'm sure you wish you had a euro for every time you've seen that. No, so what we've got to try and do is we've got to try and get the players to look up, to read the game themselves, and to make decisions. And it has to start. It's like it's like everything else in life. It's no use trying to get fellas to do this when they come to the Shamrock Rovers Academy or the Bray Wanderers Academy or the Cabinteely Academy, right? Telling them to start looking up and reading the game then. It's too late then. They must be started like everything else in the game. They must be started out at a young age. And again, the tools for doing this, I've tried in the book to give parents, coaches, the tools to do that. And experienced coaches, I also think that experienced coaches could gain from what's in it, because again, the process, like I spoke about the sculptor, again, I think I've pared everything down to its simplest form, to how simply you can do all this, how you can teach these positions. The positions are very simple at this age. There's a wide player, there's a front player, there's a support and back player. So they are the simplest positions.
I think the book has shown that it's not complicated, and don't make it complicated. And that's, yes, I think, what the book shows. Larry, I'm going to leave it there.
Let the players play, Roy. Let the players play.
Let the players play. Thanks very much for your time, and best of luck.
Sorry for taking so much time.